Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So there's a wide range of subjects that I want to talk about tonight. This is going to be an open mic session, and I encourage you all to leave comments in the chat room to let me know if there are other things that you want me to talk about during this particular hangout. It's a freestyle type of hangout. So I'm going to go through a series of different stories and just share my thoughts about them. And then I want to hear from you. If there are certain things going on that you all think I should talk about, please let me know in the chat room, and I will try to address those. This hangout may be longer than a lot of my other ones because there's a whole bunch of stories that I want to hit upon real quick. I want to just touch upon a few stories real quick. Just give me 1 second. Shout out to Big Game Orenthal. Shout out to Hollow Ninja. Shout out to Sister. Just bear with me 1 second. I'll be right back. So Hollow Ninja 10 said, why am I going live while I'm at work? Well, right now I'm off, I'm on vacation. So, I'm sorry for those people who are catching me at an inconvenient time, because usually I do videos when most people are off from work because I work, like most people. So, but right now I'm on vacation. So I know these times may be a little bit different from what I usually do. Lately I've been doing these hangouts in the morning and stuff like that. I meant to do this one in the morning, but I had a lot of stuff going on so I couldn't do my hangout in the morning. But I want to thank y'all for tuning in. Shout out to Water Sniper. So let's get into it. There's a few subjects that I want to talk about. Did y'all hear about what happened with Diddy's girlfriend? She passed away at 47 years old. One of his former girlfriends, the mother of several of his children, she passed away, man. It's crazy, man. Only 47 years old. And I'm not sure about like what was the cause of death. I just saw the article in passing, but it's tragic, man. And there's something that Diddy mentioned about hip hop that I may touch on in this as well. He was talking about the hip hop culture and it being taken over by white people. I may talk about that as well. So Big Game said that she died of pneumonia. Peace to Bullet Club Biggs. Yeah, so, and I would open this up. Like, I'd like to do, hangouts where I could share the link and just people can hop on. But after yesterday's experience, for those of you who don't know what happened, somebody hopped on my hangout yesterday and they basically kicked me out of my own hangout. So I couldn't even control my own hangout. So I'm not going to be able to post the link in the description box. But yeah, that's a tragic situation. Only 47 years old and she's dead. Like, it's like, it just makes you think about like how important life is and how short it is. And like how important it is to, cherish every moment that we have in this life, man. It's terrible. Yeah, I will pass the link through email, Water Sniper. There are people that are interested in joining. It has to be people that I'm familiar with, though. So this first story I want to talk about is out of New York. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. And I'm sure that some people have already discussed this, but I just wanted to just bring this situation to your attention. Just bear with me 1 second. Yeah, so you had this woman in New York, a black woman by the name of Anne Marie Washington, 57 years old. She was attacked on her way home from work on Friday night by an unidentified white man, as reported in the Atlanta Black Star. This white man proceeded to stab her in the chest, and I think he stabbed her in the arm as well. And because of her stab wound, one of her lungs collapsed. And the suspect has not been apprehended. They say that when this crime took place, This particular suspect was, using racial slurs. He referred to her as a black bitch and made other statements. He allegedly hit her in the face multiple times, punched her in the mouth, stabbed her with a knife. And I also heard another news report where they were unclear if it was a knife or if it was an ice pick. It was some kind of sharp object. He stabbed this woman with that. And right now, officials are not calling it a hate crime. They're trying to, investigate it further. And a lot of people are outraged because of that, because, many people observed that this person used racial slurs and racist type of terminology. So because of that, most people are assuming that it's a hate crime, and rightfully so. So according to this article and other articles that I've seen, apparently there were some people that actually captured footage of this attack, but the footage is not being released. It's being investigated and all that kind of stuff. And I think that the footage would help identify the suspect. And I saw another article where they have a sketch of the suspect. And my question is, like, why are you using just a sketch if there actual video if there's actual video footage of the suspect? Why not show his face on the news so that people can actually see who the suspect is? Yeah, so let me just go back to this article. So yeah, they talked about how there's footage of this crime taking place. So they should be able to identify this man unless he had his face covered or something like that. But if they were able to draw this sketch, apparently he didn't have his face covered. So just bear with me a second. And they were saying, according to these reports, this attack was unprovoked. She was just minding her own business, according to her daughter. And this is what, she says that her mom said. Her mom was punched all over her body, her back, chest, face, head, and stabbed by a pointy object. And they suspected it's some kind of ice pick or something. But this is the face of the suspect. This is a sketch of the suspect. So yeah, this is a terrible situation, man. And I'm just wondering, like, why nobody? I mean, I know a lot of people obviously fear for their safety and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, instead of just capturing it on video, it's like, why didn't somebody intervene to try to stop this attack or to try to grab this suspect or whatever? So now this guy is on the run. He's still free and all that kind of stuff. And this is not like the first time that one of these types of attacks occurred in New York. You had another situation where, this guy actually came from Baltimore, Maryland, and killed a random black man, out of hatred and stuff towards black people. So this incident happened in Brooklyn, this recent incident that I'm talking about. And it's my understanding that this woman is from Trinidad and stuff like that. And the thing is, like, often we make all these distinctions between ourselves. We say, oh, you're from the Caribbean, I'm from America, you're from Africa. We have all these divisions, but races like this person, they don't make those distinctions. They just saw a black woman, and he just saw a black woman and he proceeded to attack that black woman. So yeah, I just wanted to bring this story to your attention. This story needs to get more attention, more discussion needs to be generated around this story. And I hope that they find this suspect and punish this suspect to the full extent of the law. So I'm going to see what you all are saying before I move on to the next story I want to discuss briefly. So let me go to the chat room. Again, shout out to everybody tuning in. Just bear with me a second. Yeah, like people were saying, it seems like a hate crime to me. Like, you got all these witnesses saying that he used racial slurs as he was attacking this black woman. And it's like, we really need to be on the alert, man, like be prepared for these types of things because it's happening more and more frequently in this society, or it's getting more attention. You had that attack at that Jewish synagogue. You had, that guy who killed people at Kroger's. Yeah, I mean, you have these types of attacks occurring. You had the situation involving Dylan Roof. So we just got to be aware of our environment, and our surroundings. And Covina man said, I'm sure they'll catch him alive and black men will be blamed for colorism. I don't know how you tie those two subjects or whatever. But yeah, I mean, your point about them catching him alive is a very valid point because like a black man stopped for some very minor thing like a traffic violation or something, those black men end up dead too often. But when you have these white men that commit all kinds of atrocities, they're captured and turned in without any kind of incident, without any scratch on them. So yeah, that's a valid point. But in terms of the colorism thing, I don't know. I know you're trying to be funny right there, but let's see. Yeah, so BB said she lives in New York, in the New York City area, and this story is not making rotation on the news. No NYPD alerts. That's crazy, man. It deserves more attention. The sister was, after the stabbing, she was, went to the hospital. She stayed in the hospital for a while because one of her lungs collapsed, as I said before. So it's a very serious situation. She could have been killed. Fortunately, she did not die. And we heard about another stabbing that happened on another subway. I can't remember what city that was in, but you had this white racist attack two black women, and he killed one of them. So it's like, man, like, what are we supposed to do? Like, I mean, and it's illegal for people to carry firearms in certain places. It's like real hard to get a license to carry a concealed weapon and stuff like that. But it's like we got to protect ourselves, man. The sisters need to, legally protect themselves, like whether that's having pepper spray or some other kind of weapon. But this is crazy, man. It's insane. So Coco Ness Fox asked, the question is, where was the black man standing, and what could they have done, like, to protect this woman? Basically, she's saying, like, were there black men around in the area when this happened? And if so, why didn't they do anything? And, that's a good question. Like, I was wondering that because they said, as I mentioned before, that you had people there with their phones out, recording this crime taking place. But why didn't anybody intervene? And I'm sure that there had to have been some black men present. And, I think that, just decent human beings, period, should have tried to protect that woman, especially the black man. There were black men around witnessing this man use racial slurs and attack this woman. They should have done something to prevent this, to stop it from happening. And they should have tried to apprehend this person. Yeah, and then also it's a failing on the part of the city. Like, why don't they have police stationed at these places? Like, a stronger police presence, or at least cameras in the public space. And I'm not sure if they do or don't, but according to the reports, the only cameras that they were talking about were the cameras that actual citizens had. So yeah, I mean, you have, like, here in Baltimore, in certain neighborhoods, you have cameras in the street lights in problem areas. You have cameras in street lights, and you also have cameras in certain, places where public transportation is used. And it's like, why didn't they have something like that in place at this particular station? Because then they could just show people the footage, of this person, show their face, and put that on the news everywhere, so somebody could report this guy to the authorities and have him arrested. So yeah, I mean that's a very valid question, and it's just very disturbing that a story like this doesn't receive the kind of attention that it deserves. Like people would be more fixated on like a performance of Jill Scott than they are on something like this. So let's see what other people are saying before I proceed. Hold on one second. Just bear with me a second. Yeah, but it's like, yeah, and you see this all the time, like in terms of people, like someone mentioned, that you have people recording fights, and stuff like that, but they don't do anything to stop fights from occurring. And it's just a shame that people, their first instinct is to take out a phone, which, it serves a useful purpose in terms of identifying the suspect and, proving what happened and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, somebody should have just stopped, recording and actually got involved in that situation to help out that sister. Just bear with. I'm looking through your comments before I move on to the next subject. Yeah, so Norris Cool said there were no black men standing around. If there were, this attack wouldn't have taken place. And they said this Norris Cool said white supremacists choose soft targets and won't approach a black man unless he's armed or they have others with them. Yeah, and I don't know who this person is, so I'm just gonna I don't know who you're talking to, but that's that kind of stuff is not won't fly in here. Shout out to Water Sniper. This is my house. Like when I'm on here, and I won't tolerate anybody disrespecting me. Using derogatory language toward me. That's not tolerated here. Some people may be okay with that kind of stuff, but I don't tolerate it. So shout out to my man Water Sniper, and shout out to Psycho, Big Game, Coco Ness Fox, and everybody else in the chat. All right, so yeah, so somebody said it's harder to catch white dudes because they don't just stop random white dudes who fit the description like they do us. Yeah, they don't racially profile white men and stuff like that. There have been situations where a suspect has been accused of something, and what the police will do is they'll stop any random black man that in any way fits that description. And even if the black man doesn't fit that description, they'll stop him. Oh yeah, I think Nia Wilson is that other situation, that occurred. But the situation that I'm talking about right now is I'm looking at the screen right now. Just bear with me. So I'm looking, this situation that I'm talking about now, this incident that I'm talking about is a recent stabbing that took place in Brooklyn, New York, where this sister by the name of Anne Marie Washington, who's 57 years old, was stabbed by this unidentified white man on her way home from work. So that's what I'm talking about now. I want to go on to the next story. Yeah, but this is just a reminder of just how vigilant we have to be, man. We just have to be on point all the time, aware of our surroundings. And if possible, people need to have some kind of means to defend themselves, whether that's pepper spray or some kind of knife or something that you can legally carry. And if you can, you should try to legally obtain firearms and try to exercise your right to bear those arms, whether that means trying to apply for a concealed weapon permit or whatever. In certain states, like I'm not sure if people can have those in New York City. I know that they probably have real strict gun control laws in New York City, but we have to be prepared to defend ourselves, man. We can't allow ourselves to just be sitting ducks out here to be targets for these white supremacists. I've mentioned several examples of these white supremacists attacking Black people and other so-called minorities in this country. Oh, so that guy was talking to you, Big Game? All right. Oh, shout out to Nikki Justice. Thanks for tuning in. All right, so I'm going to go on to the next story that I wanted to discuss. Yeah, so some of these stories are they deal with race issues, but others don't. Like one of these is going to deal with child support. So I hope y'all can bear with me. It's just like a whole bunch of random subjects that I want to talk about. Um, where is this story about? Just bear with me 1 second. Just bear with me a second. I'm trying to pull up this story about this Black woman who was arrested at a school, while in college for putting her feet on the desk. I mean, which is insane. So let me pull this up real quick. Just bear with me 1 second. I don't know if y'all heard about this story or not, but it's received a lot of attention, at least on Facebook. I've been hearing about it. One second, Joe. Just bear with me. Okay, I have the story. So let me share my screen. And I also had this other story where Diddy is talking about hip hop. So I'm gonna touch on that. It's just like so many different things going on that I want to talk about. And it's just easier for me to just do it all at once instead of like breaking it up into a whole bunch of separate conversations. So this next story I want to talk about deals with this student that was arrested. You had this white professor actually call the police on the student. So let me pull this up so you all could see my screen. This is crazy. So here's the story right here. And I'm not going to play the video or anything like that. But you had this professor at the University of Texas at Austin. She called the police on a Black female student who had her feet up on a chair in class. And that professor was recently suspended for calling the police on this student. And in this video right here, which I'm not going to play, it shows these police officers come in there and they basically escort the sister out of the classroom just because this teacher called to complain. And the video's been on social media everywhere. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, the student hasn't been identified. And from what I understand, the professor has not been identified yet as well. But this is just another one of these situations that we see, where you have these people calling the police on Black people. You had the situation where a woman called the police on Black people who were having a barbecue. You had the situation where the police were called on some people just chilling in Starbucks, minding their own business. Their only crime was waiting while Black. Yesterday, I told you all about the Black man who was canvassing a predominantly white neighborhood for a Republican candidate. He was stopped for canvassing while Black. So we see this time and time again, like people getting stopped for driving while Black and all that kind of stuff. And now you have a Black student being arrested simply for having her feet up in class. This is like a textbook example of, an attempt to funnel somebody from school to prison, the school to prison pipeline. And we see this all the time, like on the lower levels of education, like in elementary school, in middle school and high school and all that kind of stuff, where they try to bring law enforcement into the classroom to address quote unquote disciplinary issues. They make it into a law enforcement matter, thereby funneling Black people into a criminal justice system. And, often what happens is these people who are racist and who are bigoted, narrow-minded people, what they try to do is they try to weaponize the police against Black people. They try to use the police to exercise authority and dominion over Black people. And enough is enough. I'm glad that this teacher was suspended, that this professor was suspended. And, as many people have said, there needs to be some kind of law against people being able to call the police for frivolous reasons. A lot of people just call the police. That's their first reaction when it comes to Black people. It's like they try to criminalize Black people for doing all kinds of things that are normal and, aren't any kind of violation of anybody's rights. And, calling the police is something that's very serious for, a couple of reasons. Number one, when you call the police, you're jeopardizing somebody's freedom. Basically, it's like calling slave catchers on Black people. You're jeopardizing their freedom. You're also potentially damaging their prospects for the future, like because of certain arrests that people may have on their record and stuff like that. It may make it more difficult for them to get certain types of jobs in the future. And even worse than those things, calling the police is a potentially deadly situation. We've seen situations where police have been called to the scene for very minor things. And in those situations, Black people end up dead. Over and over again. There may be some minor little dispute between some family members. They call the police and a Black person ends up dead. So, this is a very serious matter. So I'm glad that school, suspended that professor as she should have been suspended. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And the only thing that I would say about the student, like if I knew that this teacher was making some big deal about me having my feet up, I would just put my feet down. It's not that serious. But in any event, there's no justification for this professor calling the police on somebody for simply having their feet up. That's absolutely ridiculous. So let me just stop sharing my screen for a second and check in on y'all. See what's good with y'all, what y'all are saying about this before I go on to the next story. There's just so many things going on that I just wanted to talk about. And I know I may be bouncing around a little bit, but there's just a lot of stuff going on that's worthy of discussion. Just bear with me a second. Just bear with me. All right, so let me move on to the next story that I want to discuss. And that story deals with George Zimmerman. I'm going to share my screen for a second. This guy, George Zimmerman, just disgusts me, man. It's just like, I just wonder, like, why is he still around? Why is he still walking around free after all that he has done? But, this story right here from The Root, when I get a chance, I'll post a link in the description box. But basically, it talks about how this guy, George Zimmerman, avoids jail time again. And in this case, he was charged with, for stalking somebody. He stalked one of the producers from the documentary about the life and death of Trayvon Martin. He through his attorney, he pled no contest to stalking charges. He was given a misdemeanor charge for stalking a private investigator for that particular documentary. The name of the documentary is Trayvon Martin, Rest in Power. He sent threatening messages to the private investigator, and charges were brought. And basically, this investigator by the name of Dennis Warren said that George Zimmerman made scores of harassing emails and telephone calls threatening the private investigator and his family last December. So he was threatening him, and he also threatened Jay-Z and Beyonce. He threatened Jay-Z and Beyonce. He said this, he said, "Oh yeah, tell Jay-Z he's a bitch and his wife is a broke whore. If I see either of them in my life, they'll find themselves inside a 13-foot alligator." This is what George Zimmerman said. So instead of sentencing this guy, to jail time, all this guy received was probation. And we know that this isn't this man's first run-in with the law, other than being tried for murdering Trayvon Martin. This man has been, tried for aggravated assault, as pointed out in this article. It says that he was charged twice with domestic aggravated assault, and those charges were later dropped. So it's just like a pattern with this guy. He commits all these acts of violence, like he's threatening people, he's attacking people, and yet and still he doesn't face any kind of jail time. One of these days his luck is going to run out. He's going to run into the wrong person, and something's going to happen to him. And, when that happens, I'm going to celebrate it, because this scumbag shouldn't be free. This man shot and killed Trayvon Martin, shot him in the heart. And that brother Trayvon Martin was simply trying to find his way home, and this scumbag, followed him and basically stalked him, just like he stalked this documentary investigator. He stalked that brother and killed that brother, and he got away with it. And then after that, he attacked these other people, had physical altercations with people that were supposed to be his family members, and still he walks. It's just a matter of time, man. It's just a matter of time with him. And I just find that this is so aggravated and frustrating that you had this guy that has flaunted the law on several occasions, and he's still walking around free. He's still walking around just fine. This is absolutely outrageous, man. And not only is he walking around free and fine, he's actually profiting off of the death of Trayvon Martin, signing autographs for people. They have turned this man into a celebrity. selling the gun that he used to kill Trayvon Martin and all that kind of stuff. Why does this man, I don't know if this man still has a license to protect, to hold or keep a firearm. But in light of this history of him being charged with threatening people, him being charged with assaulting people, there is no reason why this man should be able to bear any kind of arms or have any firearms at that point, at all. It's just outrageous. So let me just stop sharing my screen on this story. This is just truly crazy. Let's see. Stop sharing my screen for a second. Check in with y'all to see what's going on. And again, I really welcome a debate. Like I tried to debate somebody, again yesterday, and some troll got on there and took over the program. But I welcome debate. I may do a debate this weekend. I'll let you all know if that goes forward. It's going to be on somebody else's platform. I'll make an announcement once I get the green light, once I know that everything is going forward. But yeah, I want to check in with y'all. I want to thank y'all for tuning in. I'm just trying to go through these stories real quick. Let me just scroll back up. Just bear with me 1 second. Yeah, so somebody said she wasn't arrested. She was escorted out. Hold on. And that's last story that I did. Let me just check something real quick. In either event, like I'm not going to go looking for the story again, but in either event, the police came to that school, that classroom, and they took her out. And they shouldn't have been called in the first place. That's the main point. And it's my understanding that she didn't face any charge. I know that she didn't face any charges. That I know. So what is Rita saying? Oh, okay. I see what she's saying. I mean, if you feel that way, Rita Johnson, like, why would you watch a channel that a black man is doing if you had like such, harsh views towards black men? So for those of you who can't see it, she's basically saying that if there were black men around, it wouldn't have mattered. Most of today's black males are useless. Wow, that's just a harsh comment. I mean, like, what would make you say something like that? I mean, are you just trolling to generate discussion or what? And Coco Ness Fox says black men today will shoot another black man faster than they will a white man. Yeah, I mean, you do, like, you'll see, inner city violence. Like a lot of these people that participate in this inner city violence, like the drug dealers or whatever, the gangsters and stuff like that. Most of their violence is directed inward. It's directed towards their own people, and they, rarely would use their violence against these people like a George Zimmerman or any of these other white supremacists or anything like that. So that's a valid point, but that goes back to something that Frantz Fanon talked about in his book, The Wretched of the Earth. He talked about how, oppressed people, what they do is at first, they channel their violence inwardly. They attack each other. They get off their, their anger and their frustration. They take it out on each other. And then later, when they have political consciousness, they direct their energy towards their oppressor. Um, Shout out to Ace Shabazz. Thanks for tuning in. So said John said that blacks are not full American citizens. On paper we are, like in terms of the Constitution, we're citizens. We have the rights of citizenship and all that, just like anybody else. Like on paper, we have certain rights. All right, so, but I could go on and on about that, but I won't. Just bear with me. I'm trying to go through your comments in the chat room. Yeah, but that's a good point about like swirlers ignoring this. Like, here you have a black woman who was stabbed by a white man. A black woman who was minding her own business on her way home from work, and she's stabbed by this random white guy. Like, these people, these swirlers or these black women empowerment folks, the only time they talk about crimes against black women is when it involves a black man. That's the only time they want to focus on that, because it perpetuates their narrative that the black man is, the devil, basically. And for the most part, the only time they're talking about white men is if it's something positive. They rarely want to talk about these types of situations. And even when they do, you have some of them that are so thirsty for the white man's love and affection that instead of addressing the actual violence that took place, like in that situation involving Dylan Roof, you had that Crystalline Kerosene clown basically talk about the need to, have a conversation with your white man and, try to maintain ties with that man and, just how to deal with those situations instead of addressing the underlying tragedy. So, I mean, it's like their priorities are all screwed up. They only care about black women when it involves like issues of misogyny, where there's a black man that's misogynistic. But if it's white male misogyny or white male violence towards black women, then that's a non-issue for them. They don't address that kind of stuff on their channel. So yeah, I mean that's a valid point. Like they try to gloss over things like this. Shout out to David Bowman. Just hold on one second. Yeah, somehow my comments just bounce around. One second, y'all. Shout out to Miss Legit. I'm just going through the comments. Yeah, it's crazy with George Zimmerman, man. It's like, why is this guy able to get away with all these things, man? Like he got away with killing Trayvon Martin. He got away with assaulting, several people. And now he's getting away with stalking somebody and threatening somebody. It's just outrageous, man. And it's just like another example of how failed, this criminal justice system is, man. If he had been a black man and he had shot Trayvon Martin under similar circumstances, he would have been locked up. If he had threatened somebody and stalked somebody, if he was black, he would have been locked up. If he assaulted someone, aggravated, used aggravated assault against a family member or something like that, he would have been locked up if he was black. but for some reason, it's like they give him a pass out of jail. You know, it's like no matter what this guy does, he gets away with it. They let him walk. Yeah, so there's like an ongoing debate in the chat room between these women saying, you know, some women saying that black men don't protect black women and, you know, black men are useless. So a lot of people are responding to that. You know, that was take us into a whole nother discussion if I decide to focus on that. All right, so let me go on to this other story involving Van Jones, and then I'm going to close out on this story dealing with child support. This brother, Matt Barnes, had something to say about China Black and her situation involving Rob Kardashian, and I want to talk about that last. That's going to be the last subject that I talk about for this hangout. Um, all right, so just bear with me 1 second. Again, I want to thank y'all for tuning in. So this next segment deals with a bill that Donald Trump has signed. You know, it's not a law yet, but it's like it's criminal justice reform and prison reform. And you know, I also want to talk about like the response that this move has received and what has happened with Van Jones. As you know, Van Jones is a popular commentator on CNN, and he was basically dragged on Twitter for some comments that he made about Donald Trump. So let me just make sure I pause this because I don't want anything. I don't want them YouTube to have any excuse for trying to shut down my hangout. Like they'll take any, even if it's fair use, they'll say it's a copyright violation. Um, but yeah, so Donald Trump, as reported in the New York Times, through his support behind like this substantial prison reform and sentencing reform package is very important. And it's called the First Step Act. It overhauls the prison system, you know, in some ways. It unwinds, you know, some tough on crime measures. And I'm just going to summarize some of the highlights from this particular act that's being proposed. You know, it shortens mandatory minimums for nonviolent drug offenders. It changes the three strikes rule from, you know, imposing a life sentence to imposing 25 years. Also, it deals with the stacking mechanism. You know, that's a mechanism that makes it a crime for someone to possess a firearm while committing another crime. So basically, it would only apply that stacking mechanism to individuals that were previously convicted of other crimes. Also, what this proposed legislation will do, it will retroactively um, address the sentencing disparity between crack and powder cocaine. As you know, on here, I often talk about the Fair Sentencing Act and how that reduced the sentencing disparity between crack and powder cocaine from like, it was like 100% disparity. Now it's down to like a 15-point disparity or something to that effect. And what they're going to do is apply it retroactively to all the people that were previously convicted under the disparate system. So before it only went forward, but now it goes backwards as well. Like under this proposal, it will go backwards as well. So that means that a lot of people that were previously convicted under those harsh laws that created a huge sentencing disparity between crack and powder cocaine, now many of those people may go free from jail if this actually passes. Also, this particular legislation proposes incentives and programs aimed at improving prison conditions. Also, it has plans to prepare prisoners for reentry into society. Um, it also addresses the conditions of incarcerated women. It's going to improve the conditions of incarcerated women. For instance, uh, it will prohibit, women who are pregnant from being shackled. Also, it will roll back some of the provisions of the other provisions of the crime bill that was passed by the Clintons. And Donald Trump talked about how, under the Clintons, their crime bill was disproportionate and unfair towards African Americans. So this sounds like a good legislative proposal, like a great bill and all that kind of stuff. And it's a step in the right direction. So, despite my disagreements with so much that Donald Trump has said, as well documented on my channel, I do think that this is a step in the right direction. So far, this proposal has support from conservatives and from liberals as well. So hopefully this will pass and become a law, and hopefully they can add more reforms to this bill before it's enacted to make sure that it includes everything that we need to create a better situation for ex-offenders and for non-violent drug offenders. So, so this is an important development. And as many people say, even a broken clock can be right twice a day, and this is a prime example of that. Now, in response to this decision by Trump, Van Jones heaped all kinds of praise on Donald Trump. And for that, Van Jones was dragged on Twitter. Like, a lot of people had so much to say about him. So what I'm going to do is read Van Jones's tweet, and then I'm going to read some of the responses that were on Twitter. So, Van Jones said this. He said, "Give the man his due. Donald Trump is on his way to becoming the uniter in chief on an issue that has divided America for generations. Congrats to everyone on both sides who fought for this. Hashtag First Step Act, hashtag Criminal Justice Summit, hashtag Criminal Justice Reform, etc." So in response to this, a lot of people criticized him. And as you can see in this article right here from News One, they refer to Van Jones as being in the sunken place, man, because of his congratulatory statements about Donald Trump. Because, first, before I get to these Twitter responses, there's no way that anybody can call Donald Trump the uniter in chief. Despite this positive move, nobody can call a man who has Donald Trump's track record a uniter in chief. A man who referred to Mexicans as rapists and criminals. A man who imposed a Muslim travel ban. A man who separated immigrant children from their parents. A man who has made derogatory comments about Black women, referring to a Black reporter basically as stupid, calling another Black woman reporter a loser, and calling another one racist for asking him a legitimate question about him emboldening white supremacists. So nobody can call this man a uniter. I mean, this is a man who called Black athletes who participated in those national anthem protests sons of bitches. This man has a long record of, making divisive comments, disrespecting many people. He called Don Lemon one of the dumbest people on television. This man has made all kinds of derogatory and divisive comments. It is just absolutely ridiculous for Van Jones to be referring to this prejudiced, bigoted, ignorant man as some uniter in chief. So for that, Van Jones was rightfully dragged on social media. A lot of people criticized him on Twitter. And the one standout to me of all the criticism that he received was this comment from a friend from college, like this brother I know from college. Let me just find his comment. Jelani Cobb, we went to Howard together. He's somebody that was a part of this organization that I was a part of back in the day. And he basically said that Van Jones' statement, he compared that to Jill Scott's performance. The performance that we talked about in a video that I did the other day, where she was basically simulating having oral sex. And basically, Jelani said this. He said, this was more entertaining when Jill Scott did it. So he's basically saying that Van Jones is sucking off Donald Trump. you know, you know, uh, if you saw that performance that Jill Scott did, where she was twisting her hands and simulating licking a person and all that kind of stuff, and taking it in the face and all that, in many ways, you can say that Van Jones basically did his version of that with his Twitter comments, because he went all out of his way to heap praise on one of the most divisive presidents we've ever had. It's one thing to say, well, I commend the president for, putting forth this proposal or this bill or whatever. It's quite another thing to start hyping him up and saying that he's the uniter in chief. So, yeah, I just had to touch on that. And I'm going to go to the chat room real quick before I move on to the last subject for the evening. Just bear with me a second. I want to see what y'all tune in to y'all real quick. Well, actually, there are two other subjects that I'm going to talk about before I close out, man. Two other subjects that I must talk about. Just bear with me one second. Yeah, I see y'all. Let's see. Yeah, y'all are going in on that gender war stuff in the chat room. Yeah, I mean, it's like Van Jones, like on a lot of issues, he's on point, but I just think he comes across weak, man. Overall, he just comes across weak, man, and soft. That's how he comes across to me. He has like this love everybody type of mentality and stuff like that. And I just think that's weak and soft, man. It's like, they don't really have any like really strong black men on these major networks and stuff like that. Assertive black men who are unapologetically black. A lot of times they have these effeminate guys on there, these weak guys and stuff like that. And even though he's not as bad as some of the other people, like even though, for instance, Don Lemon to say something enlightening and all that kind of stuff or something positive, at the end of the day, I mean, Don Lemon is an effeminate gay man, who's with a white man, so it's like his credibility is very limited. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, for some reason, those are the faces that they put out front for us, these effeminate black men. They give them the mic, they give them the attention. Rarely do they have like, strong black men that are assertive and masculine and stuff like that, that are, pro-black to the core. They give us these wishy-washy type of figures that want to love everybody and, have a big tent and all that kind of stuff. And there's a place for that, to some degree, but it's like nobody really goes hard. Like they don't have enough people on mainstream media that go hard for black people. And I just think that this is an example of weakness, man. I mean, here you have a man, Donald Trump, that's made all those racist statements that I talked about before, a man with racist policies and stuff like that. And, and this guy is going to refer to him as a uniter in chief and all that stuff and virtually suck him off. I just think that's weak, man. There's nothing virtuous about that. I won't go so as far as to say he's in a sunken place, but it's just like, man, he just needs to, just watch his language. Like, because I just think that it's weak, the way he, sucked up to Donald Trump and shined his shoes just for doing what any president should do. And this is not even, hasn't even passed yet. It's not even legislation. It's not officially a law yet. So like chill with the hype and stuff like that. Wait till it's actually enacted before you do all that kind of stuff, man. And even then, you shouldn't even be hyping it up that much. Because, I really think, that this is a cynical measure to try to win over African Americans ahead of the presidential elections. It's all calculated. And either way, it's still a good law. I just hope that more reforms are added to it. So let's continue on. Yeah, so people are really talking about that gender issue. Yeah, the thing is, like the whole this criminal reform, this prison reform and criminal justice reform was something, according to the article, that was presented in 2016, like, or no, actually it was 2015. It was presented back then. And the same people, a lot of these right wingers that support Donald Trump, they were the ones that were against it. That, held it up, that made it, prevented it from becoming law. So now they're just recycling something that was already presented, something that was presented by Democrats and all that kind of stuff. And now, for political reasons, Donald Trump is trying to, get this enacted and stuff. Yeah. So BB said the only reason why Donald Trump is going along with this is because Lindsey Graham is a supporter of reducing sentencing and the judge guideline protocols for lower level crimes. And it's important to point out, like, that Jeff Sessions opposed this type of reform. And it's also important to point out that, like, immediately after Donald Trump took office, he reversed a lot of the criminal justice reforms that Obama put in place. Like some of these same reforms that they're now trying to act like they support. Reducing mandatory minimums for nonviolent drug offenders. Jeff Sessions reversed that stuff. So I'm wondering if, now that they have a new attorney general, if that attorney general is going to reenact those Obama policies of the Justice Department. Um, that's something that doesn't require Congress to pass. That's something that Donald Trump can do immediately if he's really sincere about this criminal justice reform. Just bear with me 1 second. Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean when you say Democrats reach way too far for absolutely nothing. Um, so Ace Shabazz said Van Jones is about a check and white women. He doesn't rep us. Wow. Yeah, I hope his reform passes too. Nora's cool. Despite my disagreements with the Trump administration, it seems like a positive measure. Yeah, so Demarcus 62 says the white media would never allow a black man on their network who tells the truth about white supremacy. Yeah, I mean, it seems like they follow a set formula. Either they have like one of these conservatives on there, or they have one of these traditional Democrat supporters on these programs. These traditional liberals and stuff. And I don't have anything against liberals and stuff like that. But it's like they don't have anybody on any of those programs as a black nationalist. They don't invite them on those programs. They don't have people that are like strong advocates for black people. People that aren't trying to placate these traditional groups and fit into the mold that the quote unquote liberal establishment wants them to fit in, or the mold of the conservative patterns and stuff like that. They rarely allow strong independent black voices on any of these programs. They rarely interview them, and I think that they do that because they don't want them to get as more popular, or have greater influence. And you see that like with Louis Farrakhan, for instance. Like, they have basically stopped covering him the way they used to. They used to cover what he said. They would interview him and stuff like that. But they realized that all that did was give them more attention and bring more people to them. So they basically have like limited the voices that they allow on these particular mainstream platforms. And that's one of the great things about social media. Like, you don't have to go through these gatekeepers anymore. You can get directly to the people just by hopping on social media. Yeah, that's how people responded. That's how a lot of people responded. So Rita Johnson said Van Jones cried like a baby on Dr. Drew show when Prince died and his father was a cop. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he cried on that show from what I remember. And then he cried on some other occasion. I mean, he's just a like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with, like, I understand that everybody cries, but it's like, it, there's a time and place for everything when it comes to a man. Like, a man shouldn't be like publicly crying like a baby all the time. I mean, that's just weak. And, for some reason, like, mainstream media loves to see a weak ass black man. They love to promote that kind of stuff. They love these soft black men, these soft spoken black men, these, weak ass black men, instead of confrontational, strong, assertive, masculine black men that stand on principle and, and they go hard in the paint for black people. And, no I mean, I'm not trying to disrespect Van because I agree with him on some things. I do agree with him on some things. So let me not create that appearance that I, disagree with everything he says or anything like that. Yeah, they wouldn't have a Umar Johnson on CNN. And I have mixed thoughts about Umar Johnson for people that are familiar with my content. I won't go into it right now, but yeah, they won't have somebody like that on there. They won't have somebody that's like far to the left or anything like that. Someone that doesn't fit into these neat little boxes that they have for people. They just have these categories of you know people that blindly follow everything the Democratic Party is about, and then these people that blindly follow everything the Republicans are about. That's what they limit it to. Now they have strong women voices on these programs, like Angela Rye and all that kind of stuff. But for some reason they don't have strong black male voices on these programs, man. Hold on one second. I'm going through your comments. Yeah, I mean, I believe that Obama was sincere. I mean, a lot of people question Obama and this and that. Like, I hear all this ridiculous stuff about like Obama, like these people just like criticize him for the sake of criticizing him. I think that a lot of people had unrealistic expectations when it came to Obama. So because of those unrealistic expectations, a lot of people were disappointed. A lot of these people just gloss over all the good things that he did for the Black community while he was in office. Um, and they want to make it seem like he did, he wasn't sincere and he was some puppet and this and that. Um, when it comes to criminal justice reform, he didn't wait to pass some law in Congress. He knew that he had to deal with obstruction, from these right-wing Republicans. So he went ahead and told the Justice Department not to enforce like strict mandatory minimums for these nonviolent offenders. He went ahead and granted clemency to a lot of nonviolent drug offenders. That is something very significant. He de-emphasized the need to enforce these federal laws against marijuana usage, for instance, in states that have legalized marijuana. So Obama has done a lot of, he did some great things in terms of criminal justice reform. I mean, obviously there's more that needs to be done. And hopefully these proposals that Donald Trump has finally signed on to, hopefully they will become law. Yeah, Van Lathan from, if that's that brother that questioned Kanye West, yeah, then, I definitely agree that he's a stand-up brother. Yeah, you do say it. You said see the difference his voice made when he checked Kanye West. Yeah, okay, yeah, you're right about that, brother. He is a stand-up brother, and that is a mainstream platform and stuff like that. But for the most part, TMZ is just about entertainment. For the most part, they're not talking about any real serious issues. That's the one exception where Kanye West made that ridiculous statement about slavery being a choice. Um, So somebody mentioned Mark Thompson. I don't have Sirius XM and all that kind of stuff, so I don't listen to that stuff. But I'm familiar with Mark Thompson. I think he's on, one of those satellite radio stations and stuff. Uh, I've listened to him in the past. Like he used to come on the radio in the DC area, and I used to listen to him a lot. Went back then, and I actually met him a couple of times. At certain events that I've been to and stuff. Talked to him before. He's a good brother, if that's the same Mark Thompson you're talking about. Okay. Yeah, I mean that is a valid point, pro woman Jay. I mean, she is your comments about Angela Rye are on point, like, in terms of her being a lightweight. So yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I agree with that, but I think that she's an assertive voice and she is a strong voice, even though like she's not like her analysis isn't thorough or anything like that. She's not like, intellectual by any stretch of the imagination. I think that somebody like a Yvette Carnell, even though I disagree with Yvette Carnell on immigration and all that kind of stuff, I think she has a more thorough analysis than a Angela Rye. But I think that Angela Rye, she gets all this attention. I mean, she's a very attractive woman, so that's one reason why she gets a lot of attention. And then she has this sassy type of attitude and stuff like that. It's like she's borderline, she's borderline hood rat, but she's, educated as well. So it's very appealing and entertaining to watch, her on a panel or something like that. And that's what she brings to it. And she is assertive. So I do respect that, even though I think that she is in many ways like a lightweight. She's not on the level of like Michael Eric Dyson's or Cornell West in terms of her analysis and, knowledge of the issues and stuff like that. But she's cool, man. I'm not gonna hate on her or anything like that. Yeah, but it's like, yeah, I just don't understand like why people just crap on Obama, man. all these people say I've heard people say he's a puppet and stuff like that. But a lot of these people that say this stuff aren't people that like follow politics a lot, you know, unfortunately. So they just don't know what they're talking about. So this guy, I mean, I've said it over and over again what Obama's done for Black people. I'm not going to repeat it here again. Like I went through a whole litany of things that Obama did for Black people in one of my last hangout that I did. Where I was talking to L.A. This other YouTuber by the name of L.A. I went through a whole list of things that Obama has done for Black people. All you have to do is go back and watch that video. And, people keep talking about what Obama did for the immigrants. Do you know that Obama's administration locked up more illegal immigrants or, kicked out more illegal immigrants than previous administrations? Why these people talk about he did so much for immigrants? And people keep saying he did so much for gays and this and that. The only thing that Obama really did for the LGBT, he set the tone or whatever in terms of like publicly endorsing same-sex marriage, but he didn't pass laws, you know, with respect to same-sex marriage. It was the act of the Supreme Court that made same-sex marriage the law of the land. That's what made same-sex law, same-sex the law of the marriage, of the land, same-sex marriage. It wasn't Obama. So it's just like people just have a distorted sense of reality when it comes to Obama. They don't know all the facts. Yeah, I think I made my points about Obama and criminal justice reform. So I won't reiterate what I said before. Um, and just because Angela Rye is a light-skinned woman, that doesn't mean she's not a Black woman. She's Black in every sense of the word. I mean, Black people come in different shades, different complexions. She obviously reflects Black culture. She looks Black. She is Black. It's like we got to get out of this habit of, questioning everybody's Blackness, based on their skin color. There are different shades of Blackness. And she is a Black woman. She speaks out forcefully on Black issues. Why are we like trying to dismiss this woman and question her Blackness? These are the same people that want to question Obama's Blackness and this and that. Um, so I disagree with that. A lot of these comments automatically are hidden, so y'all have to bear with me for that on that. Yeah, I already spoke on the gay issue and the immigrants. Ace Shabazz said Angela Rye has two Black parents. How in the hell is she not a Black woman? Exactly, man. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Oh, so BB said he's on Sirius XM radio. You're talking about what's his name, Mark Thompson. Yeah, so somebody's not feeling Yvette Carnell. Yeah, I mean, like I like her stuff, sometimes, like I agree with her on some issues. I disagree with her on other issues. But I will say this, like she researches whatever she's talking about. She's thorough on any subject she talks about, even if I disagree with her. I don't, again, I don't agree with a lot of things she says, but there are some things that I do agree with her on. Yeah, so CRU said Obama's a killer, murderer, drones bombed U.S. citizens. I don't disagree with any of that. Like, I don't disagree with your criticism of Obama's foreign policy, in terms of using drones and stuff like that. If you look at my YouTube channel, like go back to my early videos, I criticize the use of drones and all that kind of stuff. When I was writing blogs on my written blog, I wrote about that all the time, and I criticize people who failed to call out Obama on that kind of stuff. So you're speaking to the choir in that area, like in terms of condemning the use of drones and killing U.S. citizens and all that kind of stuff. I think that people, U.S. citizens that are accused of terrorism should be brought before a court of law and tried for those crimes. I don't think that they should be summarily executed by the United States government. So on that stuff, you're talking to the choir. But, foreign policy is just one aspect of a presidency. You can condemn the wrong that a president does while recognizing the good that a president does at the same time. And most presidents have a foreign policy that promotes, U.S. imperialism. That's just a fact. So on that issue, I don't disagree with what you're saying there. I don't know why you calling her a coon. I mean, how is Angela Rye a coon? How is she a quadroon if both of her parents are black? Yeah, and a lot of these people that are saying Obama didn't do anything for black people, they sound like Candace Owens. Like I was listening to some clips of that right wing nut, Candace Owens, that puppet for Turning Point USA or Turncoat USA, Sellout USA. That person was saying the same stuff. Obama did nothing for black people, and a lot of these, these super pro-black people. They say they run with the same talking points. In many ways, they are comparable to some of these right-wing conservatives. And I've done videos about that before. Like I did a video about, you know, Hoteps, quote unquote, Hoteps being the new coons and stuff like that, because they basically support a lot of the same talking points of these right-wing races and stuff. All right, so let's see, where's B Money? Yeah, now that's a good point, B Money, about Yvette Carnell. Like she's against Pan Africanism, and I've been meaning to like do a thorough response to her condemnation of Black Pan Africanism. She's against Pan Africanism. She's made all these disparaging remarks about Africans and African people and stuff. So there's plenty of things that I disagree with her on. I strongly disagree with her running with Donald Trump's anti-immigrant talking points. Um, yeah, so I could go on and on about the things that I disagree with her on. But that's not the subject of this video. All right, so yeah, Angela Rye goes hard for black people, man. That's why I can't understand why people are trying to diss her so hard, man. um, yeah. All right, so let me move on to the next story. So let's see. I talked about George Zimmerman. So I want to say this child support thing for last. The next thing I want to talk about is this Diddy statements about hip hop. I know I'm all over the place today, but I just wanted to deal with all these subjects at once instead of doing a whole bunch of separate little videos. I may break this up later. I'll decide. Let me share my screen so that you all can see this story. I hope y'all are still with me. Well, I see a few people still riding with me. No, this is rather long. So you had this article, another article from Atlanta Black Star. You know, that's one of my favorite little websites that I like to check out. They have some interesting articles on it. So this article is about Diddy warning black folks about hip hop being stolen after posting a video about these white kids rapping. Let's see. Hold on one second. And your current treatment hasn't worked well. Where's this ad playing at? It may be time for a change. Hold on one second. Ask your doctor about Entyvio, the only biologic developed in just bear with me a second. Entyvio works at the site of inflammation in the GI tract and is clinically proven to help many patients achieve both symptom relief and remission. Just bear with me a second. And serious allergic reactions can happen during or after treatment. Entyvio may increase risk of infection, which can be serious. PML, a rare, serious, potentially fatal brain infection caused by a virus, may be possible. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, experience frequent infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Liver problems can occur with Entyvio. If your UC or Crohn's treatment isn't working for you, ask your gastroenterologist about Entyvio. Entyvio, relief and remission within reach. All right, let me see. Hopefully that's it. Let me close some of these windows. Okay, so this is the video right here that Diddy posted on Instagram. Yeah, I think this may be Twitter, actually. Let's see. No, that's Instagram. You know, he has these white kids dancing to hip hop and flashing money like hip hop artists and stuff like this. And this is what Diddy said. He said, our culture is a global resource. Let's not play ourselves and wake up one day and not own our culture. Tighten up on your contracts, tighten up on your deals, demand ownership, demand equity, protect your culture. It's for everyone to enjoy, but it's for us to own. Now, he's saying that in response to this video that he posted, like basically making this point about us keeping the hip hop culture and not allowing other people to take control over it and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, basically where they take ownership of it and it become theirs. Like we've seen this happen with rock and roll, for instance. We've seen this happen with jazz, where jazz is not like I went the other day, like, well, not the other day, like it was like a couple of months ago. I went to this jazz club when I was on business travel. And when I went there, like most of the people in the jazz club were white, like all the patrons were white. And then the jazz band was white. So it's like jazz is, you know, it's becoming whiter and whiter. And we see like with rock and roll is so white that a black person doing rock and roll is viewed as some kind of anomaly, even though it was black people that started rock and roll. So basically Diddy is warning us about that happening to hip hop. And we see that, you know, from the beginning of hip hop, there have been white rap artists involved in the art form. You know, we know about that early on. There were rap artists like way back in the day. You had Beastie Boys, you had Third Base, you had all these other, you know, a few other white people, you know, that guy Vanilla Ice. So you've had white people in the game. And, you know, more recently you had like an Eminem, you know, which people were like, you know, had placed on a pedestal and basically said he's one of the greatest ever. You had that guy Machine Gun Kelly. And the odd thing is that while, like, as somebody pointed out, like when I posted this on my Facebook page, they were basically saying, well, how can Diddy claim or complain about, you know, hip hop being taken over by white people when he signed Machine Gun Kelly? You know, so it's like it's a little bit of hypocrisy here, but I think that there's a good point here about like hip hop culture and it becoming whiter and whiter. Like you had to, you know, there's emerging white artists, and there's nothing wrong with, you know, other people participating in it. We just need to make sure that we remain the dominant voice in it, and we don't allow other people to take it over. And the funny thing about Diddy is, you know, he's talking about these contracts, tightening up contracts and stuff like that. But many of his own artists complained about him, you know, owning everything, you know, taking credit for everything, not giving them their proper pay and all that kind of stuff, you know, basically ripping them off. and he's saying demand equity, but many people complained about him not being equitable towards them. Like you had that group, the Locks and stuff like that. They were complaining about how, Puffy wouldn't let them out of their deal. Diddy wouldn't let them out of their deal. How, he profited and basically took all this money from them and stuff like that. So it's like in many ways he's being hypocritical here. But, his point is valid about the need to preserve the culture and to celebrate our own. And like what we do is we allow anybody into our mix. And then once we allow them in, we basically let them take over the house. It's like you allow guests into your house and then you let the guests dictate how things are going to work. You end up, making the guest be the person in charge of the house, even though it's your house and you laid the foundation for that house. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly mention this. I'm a big hip hop fan. Most people know this by now. So I saw that article and I thought it was interesting. So let me shut that down, and then I'm stop sharing my page, and then I'm going to look at your comments, and then I'm going to talk about this last issue before I close out. And I want to thank y'all for rocking with me. I know this has been rather long. I usually don't like to do these long hangouts. And again, I may chop this up later. Let's see what y'all are saying. All right, so let me, hold on, I'm going to go back to the beginning. Okay. So Nicholas asked, why do I support Mexican illegals? When did I say that I support illegal immigrants? When did I say that I support illegal immigration? I never said that. You can't find any kind of statement on here where I'm encouraging illegal immigration. That's not what I'm encouraging. I just don't, encourage the violation of people's human rights, separating families from their, children from their families. I don't support that. And I don't think any decent human being should support that. And I think that people that have legitimate reasons for coming to this country should be granted a pathway to citizenship. Like somebody that's fleeing, political violence and stuff like that, they shouldn't be turned away. They should be able to come to this country, just like other groups of people come to this country. And a lot of people that are so anti-immigrant, as I've said before, don't realize that all they're doing is running with white supremacist talking points. These white supremacists fear the browning of America, and that's the reason why they are so harsh against these quote unquote illegal immigrants, many of whom are coming from countries of color. These people don't have any problem with white immigrants coming to this country, but they have a huge problem with immigrants of color coming to this country. That's what this is really about. It's about their fear of people who are different. It's about their fear of the browning of America and their fear of so-called white genocide. That's what it boils down to. So my question is, like, how can anybody that's pro-Black run with white supremacist talking points and be on the same side of an issue like that as the white supremacists? Just bear with me a second. Yeah, that's a good point, B Money. Like B Money said, after dumbing down Black hip hop, now he's concerned. Yeah, I mean, that's a valid point because in many ways, like he helped dilute, true hip hop and stuff like that. In many ways, dumbed it down, made it more palatable to mainstream audiences and all that kind of stuff. Just bear with me. Yeah, I'm not gonna get into that Republican versus Democrat stuff right now. That's for a whole nother video. Yeah, so pro woman Jay said that Puff stole from and stiffed the careers of everyone around him. Nobody wants to sign with him anymore. He doesn't own anything. He's just a highly paid. He's paid highly to pitch liquor and clothes for people. Just bear with me. Yeah, so Nicholas said separation. I don't know if you're trying to say cry about that. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if you're talking about the situation of children being separated from their parents, immigrants. But it's like, what decent person would support such a policy, man? That's my question. All right, so Ace Shabazz mentioned that Puff is on Forbes at 700 million. So what are people talking about when they basically suggesting that he doesn't have money or whatever? All right, so let me go to this very last story about child support. It's like I'm going on a whole bunch of subjects. I'm sorry, I just had a lot on my mind. I hope y'all can rock with me. Are y'all still there? Yeah, so before I go on, I see the big game said Mexicans are out here killing random black people, including little girls. I'm not caping for them at all. Nobody's caping for criminals. Like if somebody commits a crime, they need to go to jail. They need to be punished to the full extent of the law. But let's not try to stereotype a whole group of people based on the activities of a few. I mean, do you want people stereotyping all black men as criminals because there are some criminals within the black male population? Of course not. So why should we imitate our oppressors by using the same kind of lazy type of logic, that uses generalizations and is based in prejudice and ignorance? I mean, I don't think we should be engaged in that kind of thing. We shouldn't be stereotyping a whole race of people or a whole group of people because of the activities of a few within that group. And basically by doing so, you're buying into the fear mongering of people like Donald Trump. Like during these midterm elections, Donald Trump ran some racist ad where he was basically suggesting that, all these immigrants are violent. A modern day Willie Horton type of ad. By adopting that kind of mentality, you're buying into that fear mongering. That ad was so racist that even Fox News wouldn't accept it. No major news channel or station would accept that ad that the Trump administration proposed because it was nothing but fear mongering. And unfortunately, a lot of us are buying into that fear mongering. What Donald Trump will do is he'll take an individual who's been a victim of a horrific crime committed by some illegal immigrant and basically use that to stir up fear against all immigrants. When the majority of immigrants that come here are not criminals, the majority of immigrants that come here are not violent people. They're people just simply trying to seek a better life. That's what they are. And I just think that too often we get caught up into, um, this fear mongering that's put out here by this right wing racist element. And by buying into that stuff, we become their puppets by, repeating what they tell us to say and by, buying into all the fear and the hatred. And the sad thing is, you've got these, quote unquote militants on here, these quote unquote pro black people on here, basically parroting this white racist nonsense. And so I made my point on that issue. I'm not going to reiterate it. I think, I made my point. You got these fake pro blacks on here, like your man Tariq Nasheed, as people quoting, um, people who haven't organized anything. While they talk about a black political agenda and stuff like that, they never organized to implement such an agenda. They haven't organized a single demonstration or protest against anything. And that's why it's so easy for them to condemn any kind of coalition with other groups because they don't know anything about organizing anything. The only thing that these people are about organizing are, screenings of their films, selling of their products. That's all they have to offer you is products to sell, t-shirts and movies and stuff like that. They don't have no real political agenda for you. They don't have any organization for you. They don't have any protests or any plans for mobilizing or any of that stuff. So I don't expect these people to know anything about coalition building because these people aren't in court fighting any kind of cases. These people aren't marching in the streets. These people aren't proposing any kind of legislation or demanding the implementation of legislation. The only thing that these people are about is entertaining you. That's all they're about. So, the fact that Tariq Nasheed would condemn coalitions, I'm not surprised by that. And these people keep parroting his nonsense about holding your own nuts. Well, the next time a black man is shot by the police, don't be surprised if other people tell you to hold your own nuts and, just deal with it. You know, when people are shot and killed by the police, we demand justice. We demand that the system prosecute those people that are responsible for it. We ask for a sympathetic criminal justice system, an empathetic criminal justice system. If we can't sympathize or empathize with others, how in the hell are we going to expect anybody to sympathize or empathize with our plight? But that's a whole nother discussion. And I know a lot of people just like have tunnel vision. They're really narrow in their focus because they're buying into all this nonsense put forth by these black power entertainers who are not real activists. They're not real activists. All they are people that are here to sell you a product. Like your man Boyce Watkins, a pitch man for some products. But that's I could do a whole live stream just on these fake people, man. They go from one hustle to the next hustle, and y'all go right along with them for the ride. One minute the man is a fake gangster rapper. The next minute he's a fake pimp and relationship guru. The next minute he's some fake pro-black. Next minute after that he's some R&B singer, doing everything he can to sell you something. But anyway, I could go on forever about that, but I won't. Let me talk about this last story. Hold on one. All right, so this last story deals with child support. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. I probably should do this as a separate live stream, but oh well. I'm on here now, so I might as well just proceed and do it. So let me share my screen real quick. Okay, so you all see this story right here. Hold on one second. So this brother, Matt Barnes, is an NFL, I mean, not an NFL, NBA star, and he had some issues involving the custody of his children at one point. And he had something to say about the situation involving China Black and Rob Kardashian. Just to sum it up, Rob Kardashian is under some, some financial strain right now. He pays $20,000 a month in child support for his child. He pays this to China, Blac Chyna, this Blac Chyna woman. He's paying all this money to her. And, this brother had something to say about this. Hold on one second. So basically, he put up he did like a fist symbol on Twitter or something like that, basically showing his support for Rob Kardashian and his struggle because Rob Kardashian is trying to lower his child support payments. Like he's going through a hard time or whatever, paying these child support fees and all that kind of stuff. And this brother, Matt Barnes, just showed his support for Rob Kardashian. And then, in response, Blac Chyna said, "I don't know you, bruh. Mind your own business, loser." That's what she said to this guy. And then in response, he basically said, back to the pole you go, trying to, responding to the fact that she used to be an exotic dancer. Um, Later on, he got onto a video and basically went on a rant about women who use the child support system and exploit it, basically using the money for themselves and not for their children. And this is what he said. He said, the system is broken. It don't cost $60,000, $50,000, $40,000, $20,000 to raise no children. We all know that most of these women are out here buying cars, buying bags, taking vacations off of that child support money. If I want to support a fellow dude going through some bullshit, I'm going to do it. Then he goes on to say this. He says, at the end of the day, it's just my opinion. Everybody's got an opinion on something. It doesn't matter. If you don't like my opinion, don't like my opinion. I don't care if you don't like it. It's just the way I feel. I'm speaking on personal experience. Now, this brother, went through his own issues. He ended up getting custody of his children and stuff like that, resolving his issues. So what do y'all think about this? I want to hear from y'all. What do you think about this issue of child support, paying these amounts? Do you think the child support system is fair? Do you think these men have any right to complain since, they wouldn't have been in the situation if they made better choices and all that kind of stuff? So I just want to hear from y'all in the chat room, and I'm just going to respond to what y'all have to say. I may do a later video stated my position on it. So let me go to the chat room real quick. Okay. All right, so I want to hear about this. So people are saying Matt Barnes is out here caping for a white man. Shaking my head. Yeah, so he's, I mean, I guess you could see it that way. He's caping for Rob Kardashian. You know, you could say, well, why is he caping for this white guy against this black woman? Stuff like that. Um, and I get that to a degree, but I'm just thinking, like, probably just as a man, period, he's seeing, you know, that this man is paying like 20-some thousand dollars a month. And, you know, he knows, you know, most people know that this woman is not spending that solely on that child. You know, she's using it to subsidize her lifestyle. And from what I understand, she has some, I think she has another kid with some rap artist or something, if I'm not mistaken. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong. And BB said, right, he was a simp that fell for a trick, so that's what he gets. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, it seems like he would be able to see that a mile away. You know, see the hustle in that woman a mile away. It seems like he would know that she was up to no good, man. That she was manipulative and all that kind of stuff, man. And then Demarcus 62 said Matt Barnes is another beta male coon. What are you, a Cynthia G follower or what? A beta male coon that capes for white people, shaking my head. I don't necessarily see this as caping for white people. He's just speaking out like as a man to another man, like a man who's gone through a similar situation that he's going, you know, that he's gone through. You know, he had issues with a woman, you know, having custody of his kids and trying to get child support and all that kind of stuff. So he identifies with Rob Kardashian. And really, you know, I would have just stayed out of it. Like that, it's like he doesn't know those people. It's like really not his business or whatever. So it's like he could have just stayed out of it and just talked about child support in general. So I see where y'all are going with that, with that whole comment, you know, about him caping and stuff. But hold on, y'all. Hold on. Let's see. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, this bounces around, so y'all gotta bear with me a second. Yeah, Boyce Watkins is something else when it comes to politics. He was on here, you know. So you're right. I mean, he talked all this crap about Obama, but he rarely has anything to say about. And I haven't watched him since that whole thing with that Charles Wu stuff came out. I unsubscribed from him back then, so I don't know what he's saying now about politics. Um, Big Game said Black Chyna is bed wenching for the movement. So props for her. So basically, he's saying since she hustled that white man out of her money, out of his money, then props to her. That's funny, man. Nobody's caping for racist Mexicans. Cut it out. Get out of here with that nonsense. Um, you know, the Black Panthers had alliances with Latinos and other so-called minorities. I mean, people that are real organizers understand the need to have coalitions. that doesn't mean you embrace, people that are racist, that are Mexicans or other groups of people that are racist or whatever. Obviously, I'm not talking about that. Okay. Yeah. So B Money said, when you're dealing with money like that, the child uh, should by default be placed with the breadwinner. So basically, he's saying that like the person that's making the most money should have custody of the child, and that would resolve that whole child support issue. So then the man, that has all the money or whatever, he would be, the child would live with the man, and he would be taking care of the child financially and in other kinds of ways and all that kind of stuff. And I think that that's a good point, but I think that I just think that men that are in that situation and they're facing child support type of issues, what they should do is have joint custody of their child, like at the very least, or full custody of their child, so that way they can have the issue of child support being addressed and all that kind of stuff, so they don't have to be exploited by somebody. And better yet, like the best way to avoid, the whole problem of child support and stuff like that is first of all, be more selective in your choices. Uh, Second, just exercise, use birth control and stuff so you don't get caught up in these situations. And I mean, I know that there are situations where people are married and stuff like that, and they don't, they're not using birth control as a married couple and stuff, and they have children. So there's a lot of issues involved, and I would recommend that somebody obviously have like a prenuptial agreement that deals with all these issues, like what will happen if they get divorced, like in terms of child custody and all that kind of stuff. Those issues should be worked out, well ahead of time, especially when you're dealing with somebody that has substantial financial resources, like these professional athletes or entertainers, because there are gold diggers out here that will have children just so that they can subsidize a lifestyle, so that they can get money, so that they can have money coming in. And it's just like brothers just got to be hip to the game, man, that's being played and stuff. And the best way to do that is just exercise self-control. Make reasonable choices. Don't go out here smashing all these women and stuff like that, and not, protecting yourself and stuff. Because by doing so, you're just setting yourself up. You're playing yourself. Yeah, because like I mean, when you look at the money, like he was saying, like it doesn't take all that money to raise a child. Like a child doesn't need $20,000 a month. Obviously you want your child to live a certain lifestyle. Your child should live a lifestyle that you live. Like if you're a millionaire or something like that, your child shouldn't be in some hood and stuff like that without the bare necessities, without things that they need. But often with child support is well above what a child needs to have a comfortable life. Um, but it's like instead of like um, just blaming the women, the man has to obviously take responsibility for his actions and um and deal with the consequence of his actions. But then again, also use the legal system in a way that benefits him and the child. So Big Game said, I think Rob should have to pay all of that, but child support is unfair for Black people. And Ace Shabazz said child support is never on the man's side. The more you make, the more they take. Yeah, that's true, Joyce. It is based on income. So, like that, obviously, like the more you make, the more you have to pay in child support. And Joy said, I think the other kids and your expenses should be taken into account when setting the amount. Yeah, that's what should happen, but often it doesn't happen. For instance, if you have a child that lives with you that you don't have to pay child support for, they don't take your expenses for that child into account. Like especially in a place like here in Maryland, they don't take that into account. So they don't consider that expense. They don't consider what kind of bills you have or any of that stuff. You are not even really a factor. They just consider how much you make on paper, and they do some random some calculations based on that. It's just about math. That's all it is to them. Um, it's a mathematical equation, a formula, or whatever. Um, yeah, so it's just better not to get caught up in the game, man, just by making the right choices. And yeah, so Joyce said, yeah, she has a child with Tigger. Yeah, that's uh, whatever his name is. Yeah, yeah, I think yeah, that's what I remember. She has another child, and she's getting child support for that child too. So she's eating off of these kids, man. Yeah. So somebody said they think Boyce is bitter from that Wu thing. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with him now. Like I saw like a little piece of one video that he did recently, but other than that, I don't follow him like that anymore. So I don't know what he's doing. So BB said, "How is child support hurting Black people?" I'm confused. B Money mentioned that he has full custody of his son. Yeah, I think that that's what brothers need to do to try to avoid, not to just avoid the child support exploitation or whatever, but just so that you can be a part of your child's life instead of like having visitation. Visitation is not enough. Like you're not seeing your child enough with just like seeing them every other weekend or on a couple of days during the week. If your child lives with you, you have a greater influence on your child's life. You are more engaged. And, I just think that that should be the norm. Like brothers should try to have custody of their children. And regardless of what happens in these relationships, we need to be there for our children, you know, um, all the time. Yeah, I know a lot of people like to quote that. John Henry Clark. Like I agree with a lot of things that he said before, but on the issue of coalitions, I don't agree that we don't have allies and all that kind of stuff. As long as you live in America and you only make up 13% of the population, it's only intelligent to reach out and develop alliances based on mutual respect and mutual interest. That's only intelligent. Only somebody that's not interested in actually affecting change would have a posture or a position that says that we don't need allies, we don't need to have coalitions. I recommend that people read the book by Kwame Ture, who was formerly known as Stokely Carmichael, entitled Black Power. In that book, they talk about coalitions. They talk about how to build, strong coalitions and the pitfalls and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying just go along with any coalition just for the sake of going along with it. I think that we need to have equality in these coalitions. We need to have power, and we should only be in coalitions that benefit our interests. It should be about us promoting our interests first and foremost. Um, so yeah, that's my position with respect to that issue. Hold on one second. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. So BB said that child support is for the child's lifestyle, not the woman. The woman takes care of the child based on her standard of living. Yeah, but I mean, while that's true technically, we know that some of that money is not going to the child. We know that some of that money, like if you're getting $20,000 per month, we know for a fact that all $20,000 per month is not going solely to that child's needs or to address things for that child. We know that some of that money is going to the mother for her own purposes, and part of that is legitimate. Like part of it is legitimate for her to pay, like her own expenses, like in terms of her housing expenses because the child lives there, food expenses and stuff like that. Obviously, um, but it shouldn't go for cars and for travel and for hairstyles and all that other kind of extra stuff. Um, but that's what. Oh, so Big Game said they'll toss out a prenup in California. Yeah, I mean the laws vary from state to state, man. So B Money said he went through the child support system, and he was a better parent with a house and everything, and he still had to fight tooth and nail to get visitation, then custody. Yeah, that child support is real, man. You know, like even in a situation where a man is providing for his children, the woman can still sue him for child support and, end up, getting a substantial chunk of his earnings and stuff like that. Well, way more than what a child needs to live a decent life. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I get that about like mortgage expenses. That's a legitimate expense for somebody to pay, use child support money for because a child is living in that house. And child care expenses like a nanny and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean those are legitimate expenses and stuff like that. And B Money said, I when I got custody of my son and I asked his mother to contribute, all of a sudden she said she didn't have those extra, she didn't, he didn't need those extra expenses. So once you had your son, all of a sudden the extra expenses were no longer needed. Yeah, man, it's messed up, man. And Rita Johnson said, "You play, you pay." Yeah, I mean that's the reality of the situation, man. It's like that's why it's like if you don't want to have children, you should make sure you have that birth control in place, man. And if you know you don't ever plan on having children or something like that, then why not get a vasectomy so that'll never be an issue or a potential problem? Um, Yeah, because I've heard stories of where like people even use birth control, and a woman may try to sabotage the birth control, or you know, take semen from a discarded condom or whatever, impregnate herself. It's a lot of things, man. So it's like you just got to be on first of all, you got to make reasonable choices, in terms of like what kind of woman you're going to be with. We should be able to discern between like a money grubbing, materialistic woman and a woman of virtue and value and stuff like that. A woman of class and respectability. So yeah, so those are my thoughts about these particular stories. I want to thank y'all for hanging in there. I know this has been an extra long hangout for me. And I truly appreciate your support. Please like this video, share this video. If you're not subscribed to my channel, subscribe. Um, and share my videos and encourage people to subscribe to my channel. Again, my goal is to reach 10,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and I hope you all can help me do that. So with that, I'm going to say peace and blessings to each and every one of you. Good night.